Today we are going to discuss peptic ulcer in children. Now, peptic ulcer is usually caused by imbalance between the cytoprotective and cytotoxic factors, which leads to inflammation. Now, the pathogenesis is multifactorial, but it includes the final common pathway where there's the action of acid and pepsin-laden contents of the stomach on the gastric and duodenal mucosa and the inability of the mucosal defense to allay those effects. Now, the deep mucosal lesions that disrupt the muscularis mucosa of gastric and duodenal wall defines the peptic ulcer disease. We can classify peptic ulcer disease in two types, primary peptic ulcer and secondary peptic ulcer. Primary peptic ulcer seems to be more chronic. Mostly they occur in the duodenum and they are frequently associated with H. pylori. Whereas secondary peptic ulcers are acute in onset, they most commonly occur in the stomach and they can occur secondary to variety of causes like sepsis, shock. There is a specific term we use for intracranial lesions. We call that ulcer Cushing's ulcer. When the peptic ulcer occur after some intracranial lesion, we call it Cushing ulcer. And severe burns can also lead to peptic ulcer, which we call as curling ulcer. Peptic ulcer can also occur secondary to use of NSAIDs, then other drugs including steroids, valproate, acid hypersecretory states like Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, infections including HSV, herpes simplex virus, cytomegalovirus, tuberculosis, inflammatory conditions like Crohn's disease and sarcoidosis. Now, the etiological classification of peptic ulcers, we have variety of causes. Now, I'll discuss the important ones. One is the H. pylori, which I'll discuss in detail later on. Second is the NSAIDs. Then third is including the both positive H. pylori and NSAIDs are positive. Then third important one is Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Tumors like cancers, lymphoma, carcinoid syndromes, inflammatory condition like Crohn's disease. Then we have the eosinophilic gastroduodenitis, systemic mastocytosis, radiation damage, the viral infections like CMV and HSV, particularly they occur in immunocompromised patients. Then any severe systemic disease. Now, one important term is Cameron ulcer. Cameron ulcers are gastric ulcers occurring in cases of the hiatal hernia. They are the linear ulcers which commonly occur in the proximal stomach at the end of large hiatal hernia. As you can see in the diagram, at the end of the large hiatus, where the diaphragmatic pinch is there, at that site we have the linear lesions which we call as Cameron ulcers. Now, the last one is the idiopathic ulcers, which can be found in 15 to 20% cases. Pathogenesis of peptic ulcer disease involves two main processes. One is the increased acid production, and second is the damage to the mucosal defense. In stomach, we have the parietal cells or oxyntic cells, which produces the acid, hydrochloric acid. Now, there are secretagogues present, which increase the acid production. These secretagogue include the acetylcholine secreted by the vagus nerve. Second is the histamine secreted by the enterochromaffin cells of the stomach. Then increased gastrin production by the G cells. These all will lead to increased acid production by the parietal cells. Now, the protective factor include the prostaglandin, which inhibit the acid production via parietal cells. And prostaglandin also are protected by increasing the mucin production, which forms the protective layer. Now, for the mucosal defense, we have the first line, which is formed by the mucus gel, and its production can be increased by the prostaglandin E2. And second line defense is formed by the gastric or duodenal epithelial layer. So any process which leads to the increased acid production and injury to the mucosal defense can lead to the peptic ulcer formation. For example, in case of the NSAIDs, they inhibit the cyclooxygenase enzyme, which causes the reduced prostaglandin production and increased risk of mucosal injury and lead to the formation of peptic ulcers. The NSAID-induced ulcer commonly occur in the antrum of the stomach. Clinical features include hematemesis or melena, epigastric pain, dyspepsia, in extensive inflammation and edema can even lead to the gastric outlet obstruction. You can only find the typical pain which gets relieved after taking antacid in less than 33% of the children. Now, there is a distinguishing point between the duodenal and the gastric ulcer, but this is less commonly seen in the children. The duodenal ulcer, the pain usually occurs 2 to 3 hours after the meal, and it gets relieved immediately after taking the food. Whereas in cases of gastric ulcer, the pain occurs shortly after the meal. So the person tries to avoid taking meals, but this point is less commonly seen in children. Now, for the diagnosis, the investigation of choice is esophagogastroduodenoscopy. It is both diagnostic as well as therapeutic. You can via endoscopy, you can see you can see direct visualization of mucosa is possible, and you can see the ulcer. In all cases of endoscopy, biopsy must be taken in all the cases. Even if endoscopic appearance grossly is normal, then also biopsy must be taken. And histological examination as well as H. pylori screening should be done. I told you that via esophagogastroduodenoscopy, the diagnosis as well as therapeutic interventions can be done. The therapeutic interventions which we can do includes the clipping of the bleeding ulcer, injection ADR can be given, thermal coagulation can be done to stop the bleeding. Now, one important cause of peptic ulcer is Helicobacter pylori. A few points about Helicobacter pylori. It is a gram-negative bacteria. It is in the shape of S-shaped rod. It produces the urease, oxidase, and catalase enzyme. Mode of transmission is fecal-oral. The risk factors for acquiring H. pylori are poor socioeconomic status and affected family members. The clinical features are same as I discussed. It can cause the pain abdomen, vomiting, iron deficiency anemia, and poor growth. All children, whether symptomatic or asymptomatic, with H. pylori infection will show the histological features of chronic active gastritis. Now, one important point is H. pylori leads to the increased risk of gastric cancer, like adenocarcinoma, mucosal associated lymphoid tissue, lymphoma, and the risk is increased to 2.3 to 8.7 times as compared to the general population. So, H. pylori is also group classified as group 1 carcinogen by WHO. and it also increases the risk of duodenal ulcer. Now, extra gastric manifestations include the anemia, extra gastric manifestation of H. pylori. It includes the anemia, ITP, short stature. Now, investigation of choice, as I discussed, is endoscopic biopsy and histological demonstration of the organism. The endoscopic biopsy must be taken from the body and antrum of the stomach, irrespective of the endoscopic appearance. And it is recommended for all the symptomatic children with suspected H. pylori infection. The endoscopy can show the normal appearance, non-specific gastritis like changes, and even the ulceration. Other non-invasive tests include uh, urea breath test and stool antigen test. And the tests which are not recommended are antibody-based tests. If H. pylori is detected, then eradication therapy must be given to all the children. Even if the child is asymptomatic, then also eradication therapy is indicated. And it is also mandatory to monitor the success of the therapy. We monitor the success by non-invasive methods, and it is done 4 to 6 weeks after stopping the antibiotics. And we use the non-invasive method. In case there is an eradication failure, we give rescue therapy, which I'll discuss shortly. In case, now I'll discuss the treatment part. In case peptic ulcer disease patient is presenting as upper GI bleeding, we give the initial resuscitation to the child. We monitor the vitals, give NS bolus if the child is hypotensive. PRBC is given if there is severe anemia, and we take the cutoff as hemoglobin less than 7 gram per deciliter. NG should be placed to detect any active bleeding and start the patient on high dose intravenous proton pump inhibitor therapy. Usually we give pantoprazole, which lowers the risk of rebleeding. And when the child is hemodynamically stable, we should do the endoscopy. And via endoscopy, as I told, therapeutic interventions like mechanical devices, clipping, injection, epinephrine, thermal therapy can be given. Now, first line therapy for peptic ulcer disease and gastritis is proton pump inhibitors, including the pantoprazole, lansoprazole, rabeprazole, and it is given before the meals. Current recommendation is to, when the child presents, start the patient with on the intravenous proton pump inhibitors followed by endoscopy. Based on the endoscopy, we give the further treatment. In case the endoscopy is showing there is active bleeding is present and visible vessel is there, then endoscopic therapy we give. Endoscopic therapy like mechanical devices like clipping, thermal coagulation, we do that. And we start the patient on high dose proton pump inhibitor. We give 80 mg bolus followed by 80 mg per hour infusion is given for 3 days. In case there is adherent clot, there is no recommendation for or against endoscopic therapy. It should be individualized. But we have to start the patient on high dose proton pump inhibitors. In case there is flat pigmented spot or clean base, then there is no need for endoscopic therapy. We start the patient on oral proton pump inhibitors. Now, treatment for H. pylori induced peptic ulcer disease include the triple regimen, which has 2 antibiotics and 1 proton pump inhibitors. Antibiotics are given for 14 days and proton pump inhibitor for 1 month. Antibiotics include the amoxicillin plus clarithromycin, amoxi plus metronidazole, or clarithromycin plus metronidazole. In case there is a resistant H. pylori infection, then we have the alternatives, which include the bismuth-based quadruple therapy, rescue therapy with levofloxacin, rifabutin, or furazolidine, amoxicillin plus bismuth, or sequential treatment with different antibiotics. First 10 days we give proton pump inhibitors and amoxicillin, and for the next 5 days we give proton pump inhibitors plus clarithromycin and metronidazole. Thank you.